Okay guys, I've been asked how my Lexan windows have been made up and how I do it. This was my first attempt on trying to make a Lexan window for any sort of car, and it came out poor as. The vents were for an old radiator setup for the old intercooler setup I had. That idea's been scrapped now, so the vents are absolutely useless now and not needed to be there. So in this video I'm just going to show you how I'm going to try and neaten up these windows, and hopefully you can learn a few things, and hopefully I can make this look half reasonable again. Okay guys, so there is the world-class Lexan window that has been taken out of the car and never to be put back into it. Originally what I tried to do with the window was I tried to put some of the black vinyl on the inside of the actual window to try and make this blackout effect, you know, what they have on the factory windows. But it's proved that the actual vinyl prefer to stick to the actual glue and not the window. You end up getting air bubbles which appeared in between the actual vinyl and the actual Lexan itself. So we've got to try something different this time on how we actually make a seal for being a bit more waterproof, and yeah, try and make it look a bit more respectable rather than just air bubbles all the way around the edge. So I'm just going to try and get the loose off here.
In the sky, gazing far into the night, I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use.
Okay guys, so we're on the other side of the car at the moment. I just want to quickly show you, just after you drill the holes, usually get a fair bit of deburring on the actual holes because it's thin sheet metal. So just quickly knock that back with the grinder, and just when you go along, just take the bearing off, try and take some of the glue off all the way back to the bare metal. This way, what we're going to use to fill these holes up with thread is actual nutsert kit, and they prefer to have like a nice flush surface to basically fight against, really, because they've got little teeth and that on it. So yeah, just a quick little tip, just to take the burrs off of the face, and then also on the back side as well. I've taken off what I can. Obviously you can't get to this inside too well because it's a double panel, and yeah, pretty much what you can do. Alright. Okay guys, so this is what we're going to use to pop a thread into the actual car's body. This is called a nutsert kit. I've come across it through a few videos now on the internet, and I had a look for myself. And it's basically like just a pot rivet gun, but instead of just putting pot rivets in, you can actually basically sort of clamp down a thread into your sheet metal. It's very cool little tool. I've actually used it a fair bit on my car. It's pretty simple. You've got a bunch of threads. I think you've got 3, 4, 5 and 6 millimeters in this kit. They're all the aluminium nutserts. You can buy steels, stainless steels, and I think maybe a couple of other things. Problem with the steels with this handpiece is that you just don't get enough leverage really to clamp down the nutset. You basically try and do it with 2 hands, shaking away to yeah, get the nutset to clamp onto the sheet metal. So the aluminium works really good. It's quite easily just to press into the sheet metal. So we're going to use a 6mm thread on the actual car. It's a common thread to use. So this is the actual 6mm rod, I guess you could say. This screws into the nutset, and basically this is what's going to pull the actual nutset over the actual hole. Sort of clamps it down. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Slide it straight through. You can screw your nutset onto the actual rod, and then you've got an adjustable, you've got an adjustment there on how far your handpiece can go out. So the more you want it out, the further you can go out. I go all the way out, so you pretty much can't go any further. And just lock the handpiece, or lock the nuts there. So I'll just quickly try and give you a demonstration of how this works. So this is just a normal washer, and just going to throw that over top, like so. So as you can see, it just slides through the hole fairly easily. It'll tighten it up, it actually hasn't. You've got to pull the nuts all the way out so the actual nutsert bottoms out on the actual piece down here. If you have them too far in, actually get a small gap. So when you try to clamp it down, it's going to take a fair bit of throw before it actually gets some weight onto it. So that's what these nuts do, they sort of pull the bolt back so your nutsert can go flush up against the actual head. And yeah, it's actually quite a handy little tool. Pretty much clamp it down, try and get it to focus. Okay. So I'm just going to clamp it down like so. And you can see it's really pulled up against the washer. Now I've run out of leverage in the actual handpiece. It sort of just takes a basically sort of like a couple of lines back. The actual nother fucking nut here. So yeah, as you screw that out further, that pulls the rod back even further, that clamps up the nutsert against the head again, and then pretty much you can only get sort of one pull out of this. Just put a little bit of weight onto it, that sort of really clamps down and makes all the little teeth sort of try and bite into the metal. And yeah, that's pretty much what you end up with. It's just like basically like a nut which is sort of clamped down onto the actual sheet metal, and yeah, you're good to go to throw a bolt in. So it's really handy on cars when you're trying to make brackets up, and it's just going to be a pain in the ass to try and weld some nuts onto the car and try and get some bolts sort of sitting there. It's just real convenient just to drill a hole in and put one of these in, and then yeah, start bolting up your little custom made brackets. So yeah, pretty cool little tool. Just sort of show you that, and this is what we're going to use to put the threads in the car body and fold up the window to the car body. Okay guys, so we've got the nutsert ready to go into the car body, and hopefully it turns out alright. As it's a double panel, there's actually two panels going through the nutsert, so hopefully it pulls up okay on the one panel. So we can only try and see what happens. Okay, so I've done the first push with the nutsert. Now you can sort of wind out the top thread here. This will actually make the head of the actual tool clamp back up to the actual tool. So now you're ready to go for another push. Basically, once you only sort of get one push out of these. I've got a little bit just then, and you pull it up just so it's tight. You don't go overboard, otherwise you actually strip the aluminium thread inside, and then you've got the funds of trying to grind it back out. So pretty much it'll pull up tight, and then you just clamp it a little bit further than that, and you can't even feel it. I'm trying to bite up anymore against the steel. So that's it, you know, it's bottomed out, it's done its what it's had to do. So now it's just unscrewing it. And that's it. You've got a thread popped into your sheet metal. And it's quite a handy little tool. So we'll do the rest of that to the holes now, and hopefully they all turn out sweet. Okay guys, so now we've got all the nutserts in to the actual framework. We're ready to start tracing out the actual outlining of where our window needs to be cut. We need to try and find that shape first, so the way we're going to try and do that is just using a bit of paper, try and stick over the edge, the outer edge, and just a matter of making a crease line on that paper, and then just cutting it out, tracing the crease line. For the upper edge here, because it's a hatchback, it's got no body to work off with. just to try and get the actual crease line in this paper. So I've just gone along and get a bit of aluminium flat bar, and just run that pretty much along the body line, just on the two corners, and same with down here. Pretty much sort of see that's the corner of the boot there, so just lining up the roof to the boot with this aluminium flat bar, and then also just trying to get the sort of curvature, I guess you could say, sort of right the body. So I'm going to try and press it over and leave that to sort of stick, just to try and get this window in the best shape possible, so it meets up with the actual hatchback itself. Just need to keep in mind that when it opens up, it's still going to have the actual framework opening up, so just need to make sure that we leave a big enough gap for the opening to be able to happen. Alright, so we'll start throwing some paper over the window edge, and we'll just trace along the outside, basically just on the borderline with where we need to make that cut. Okay guys, so now we've cut out our Lexan window. We're just going to use this as a template, as we've converted the shape from paper to plastic. The paper itself is never going to be exactly right because it's so flexible and can move around a lot that the actual measurements aren't going to be correct. So we're going to peel off the protective layers of the Lexan, and then we're going to put it up against the car body, and then actually start trying to trace out the actual body lines on the actual clear Lexan itself, so then we can actually see exactly where we need to do the cuts, and we'll try to bend the plastic into shape, or like we'll try and stretch it across the actual car body itself where the window needs to go, so that way we can try and really dial in where we need to do the cuts. And then once we've done the cuts on this, because we've taken a protective layer off, that it's all going to be scratched up, so this isn't going to be able to use as a window because it's just going to be all scratched up and be used as a template for the other two windows. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make a proper template out of this one. We've just converted the lines from paper to plastic now, and now we just got to finalise the shape on the plastic template before we can do the actual other two cuts, which will be the proper window itself. So let's get to it. guys, so now we've got the Lexan window just resting on the car's body. The critical thing that I've done is I want the bottom of the window to be lining up as best as I can with the actual body line of where the actual window is going to be sitting once it's been glued and screwed in. You know, this is the final sort of fitment, and this is how I want it to be sitting on the car. So I'm going to try and get into this position before I start tracing out some lines, so then it should be exactly the same once I bolt it all in. So to try and trace these lines, I'm going to have to try and hold the bottom of the window here, and I'm going to have to actually try and roll the plastic over before I start tracing any lines out. So I'm going to try and get it as close as possible to its final form before I trace the line, so that way it's going to have a better fitment when I do try and bolt it up properly. Okay, so now that we know that the window is getting close to its final form, I want to try and actually get the window to bolt up to the car and find out where exactly we need to sort of finalise doing the trimmings around the edges here. So one thing I want to try and get right first when I throw the window up is that I get the main body line meeting up with the car nicely and flush. This is what I'm going to work off with, so I want to try and get this cut as best as I possibly can, so that I can try and get the rest of the cuts around the other edges pretty well spot on. So as I'm just trying to fit the window up at the moment, I've noticed that I've got a bit of a high spot just around here. So what I want to try and do is just get the actual each end of the window lining up perfectly with the lip of the body line, and then I want to find any little high spots that are actually sort of obstructing the window from sitting along flush and nice with the actual body line. So as I can see around here, that I've got a little kink in the actual line, so I want to just try and take that out. I only need to take a little bit out as well, so what I'll do is I'll try and do like a bit of a mark of where roughly the high spot's in, and then I'll just draw a line along the bottom there, so that way I can visually see how much I'm grinding off. As the grinding just cutting into the plastic, I can see the actual text mark disappearing as I go, so just as a guide so you can see actually how much material you're taking off. So I just wanted to point that out before we start doing the rest of it. Alright.
Come close to me, I'll whisper in your ear the things that we could be. I'll drown us in the purple drapes that you were clothed in. We could live like royalty. I'll sing to you like a radio that's held beneath your window. Don't look so sad, your crying eyes won't dry. You've gotta drive with both headlights so we can see the world, and we'll run away together like
Okay guys, so we've got the window pretty much bolted in now, or the template I guess we could call it. One little thing I want to throw out, or point out to you is when I've done these windows first up originally, I haven't played with Lexan before, so it was sort of the first time. One thing I did stuff up with was the spacing with the bolts too far apart, and what you'd end up getting is a big wavy looking window all down the side of it there. So these spacings are about 200mm apart with the bolt holes. I'm going to end up putting another bolt in the middle, so a spacing of about 100mm for 3mm Lexan is probably what you want to aim for, especially with the sides that are going to be under stress, under weight. which is what this is under this side. The bottom's actually turned out pretty good. It's actually come along fairly nicely along the actual body line. It's actually a pretty cool little thing that the actual window's actually starting to bottom out on the actual body line here. I actually can't force the window to go in any further closer to the actual window edge because it's bottoming out here, so that's actually a plus. That way at least we know we can't actually screw the window down any further, so it's roughly sort of staying close to flush with the actual body and then the transition to the Lexan, so it just gives you a better looking finish when it's done, so that's actually worked in our favour. So other than that, I'll go along and put some bolts in the middle of each, in between each lot of bolts here. I'll end up putting a lot of nutserts, and I'll do the same for the bottom as well. Yeah, just put one right in the middle in between, so underweight, about 100mm spacing is probably what you want to look for. Otherwise, if you put the bolts too far apart, it's just going to be too wavy and you're going to have the big ripple looking effect, as you can see in the reflections there, so that's what we don't want. We want to try and eliminate all that flexing. And also, while the window's bolted on here, we can actually finalise trimming up the edges and getting all the edges nice where they need to be, so we can still see that we need to take a little bit more off down along here just to get them to fit. So at the moment she's still overhanging a little bit on the actual car body, so I need to take a little bit of that off, but other than that it's looking pretty good. Actually getting a pretty reasonable looking sort of gap down the ends, and that should look quite good once we put the blackout on the insides of the windows there, so fingers crossed it'll turn out alright. Okay guys, so now we've gone along and drilled in, put all the extra nutserts in between all the other bolts I was mentioning about. Looks a lot better now. It's actually pulling down to the car body a lot better. There's a lot less ripple effect on it. Other than that, it's turning out pretty good actually. Quite happy with it. Now that we've got the top of the window pretty much close to the car body, we can really finalise where we can cut that line and finish it off. So otherwise, everything else is actually lining up pretty nicely. So other than that, pretty good. Okay guys, I'm currently just fitting up the passenger side window at the moment, and I just want to point out again, when you're going to start fitting up the windows for the first time and start drilling all the holes for the nutserts, just start off in the bottom corner here first. Just start off in your corners. So the main corners you want to start off with is your feature line pretty much with the car's body. So yeah, I've started off, I put my first screw in the bottom here, and then as you can see the Lexan wants to basically just wrap around by itself, like it really wants to just follow that actual line there where you have the glue for the actual quarter glass windows to stick onto. So just again, you know, you are going to have to wrestle them down a little bit and just try and actually get them to fit flush with that line. So just point that out. You know, just start off with your bottom corners first, the main ones, and then do the rest of your holes on the bottom, and then start working your way up to the top. Okay. So when you got your window all finished and you're happy with how it's all fitting, what you want to do before you take your window off is just to quickly just get a rough outline of where you need to put the blackout to, if you wanted to do it that way with your windows. Another way you could do your blackout is actually just paint the car body and you have a nice finish like that, but I'm going to do blackout on my windows, so I just roughly want to know where I need to do up some masking. I do want to leave an edge in between the actual framework and the actual masking, so when I do a fine trimming from the inside of the car with a razor blade, I can really get it to where I want it to be cut to. So alright, and what you'll do is take the window off, and then you'll flip the window over and just mask up from the inside. Obviously that's where you're going to be painting, so at least you can just flip it over once the window's out and on a table, and you just trace around looking straight through the other side. Okay, so now that we've got the windows out of the car, we know which side's the outside of the window. So what we want to do is we want to flip them over so we can mask off the actual inside of the car where we're going to spray the blackout to. What we're going to use is just going to use a bit of plasti dip, try and use that as the blackout, and hopefully it turns out alright. So we'll see how we go. Okay, so now that we've masked up the inside of the window, next thing to do is to try and give the windows a nice clean. Just try and get rid of all the fingerprints and all the grease that's been left behind. We want to try and get rid of that as much as we can because we're going to spray black over top of that. Whatever's trapped in between the black paint and the actual surface of the window, it's probably going to show up pretty bad. As you know, black cars show up a lot of imperfections pretty easily, so we want to try and clean this as best as we can. So all I'm going to use is just using some prep wash, it's also known as Prepsol. It's just a wax and grease remover. It's normally what you use to wipe down your car when you're about to paint it. So I'm just going to damp it with a normal paper towel and try and get rid of these as much as we can. So one thing that you want to pay attention to when you're going to clean the window down is put lots of Prepsol or cleaning solvent that you're going to use, and just pay attention to how the plastic's reacting to the solvent. That way you got an idea of what's going to happen when you put the paint onto it. It's going to tell you whether you need to put like a real light tack coat onto the surface, if it's going to do like a real fisheye effect, which I've noticed with the other window that I started cleaning up just to see what that was going to do. And you can see, if I can get to it, you can sort of see how, there we are, you can sort of see how it sort of fisheyes, all the oil goes all weird, so it's sort of like reacting to the actual plastic. So what we want to pay attention to when we put paint onto it is to actually do a real dry coat. So we're not going to put the paint on super wet, otherwise we're going to get this effect with the paint. So it's a real good indication when you're cleaning your metals or your actual plastics or whatever you're going to paint. Is just to just see what it's reacting like. That way you got a bit of an idea on what you have to do for your first coat. So we can see the plastic's reacting pretty well to the solvent, so we'll definitely make sure we try and put a real dry first coat on, just so we try and eliminate that fisheye effect, because that'll look pretty bad when it's all done. Okay guys, so we've got the Lexan windows all cleaned up, pretty much done the final clean up, ready to try and put this paint on. The paint that we're going to use is a plastic dip, and this is what I'm using. It's just something that I picked up at the local car shop, and I got a couple of cans of those. Make sure you read the back of them. This stuff looks like it does seem to dry a lot longer in between coats. It's saying around about half an hour in between coats to let it flash off. So yeah, so I'm just using a matte black, nothing fancy, no gloss or nothing like that. You don't need gloss because you're going to be painting the inside of the windows. When you flip them over, you're going to have the reflection of the plastic anyway, so that's where you're going to have your nice finish, a nice reflection finish. So yeah, we'll do a light coat just to make sure that we're not going to get any odd sort of things happening on the surface. So once we do a nice light coat and let that dry off, probably let that dry for like 10-15 minutes because it's going to be such a light coat, and then we'll do a real heavy coat after that. We'll probably do another 4 heavy coats after that, and staying around 3 to 4 coats with this stuff to really, I guess, give it that effect where you can peel it off and yeah, peel it off like a sticker. So yeah, so we'll probably do a total 5 coats with this. Alright, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've just done the first coat, and this is why I've done a real light coat to start off with. You can see what we call, when you use painting terms, fish eyes. It's like you've got oil on the actual surface, and then you're trying to spray water as the paint onto it. They just don't mix, and it sort of separates on the actual plastic. So that's why we've done a real light coat. It's just so if we'd done a real wet coat, we would have had that a lot worse effect and could have spread out a little bit worse. So that's just a tack coat, really, just to basically sort of act like an adhesive for the next coat we sort of lay down, which will be a lot more wetter. So really the next coat that we're going to throw down on the actual plastic on the windows is pretty much, it's going to be sticking to itself now, the actual paint will be. So pretty much we'll just put a layer in between the actual plastic and then the next coat of paint. So now it's only just going to be sticking to itself, so we should be able to go heavy now and get the paint really laying down on there nice and thick. Okay guys, so at the moment I'm letting the back window dry. I'm halfway through doing that at the moment. I've let the quarter windows dry overnight, so they're all nice and dry, ready to go. I'm just going to throw a bead of silicone around the window edge, and we're going to let that fully cure overnight. All this is going to do is basically just act like a little gutter for water to stop getting in. Because we've got the window bolted in, we don't really have to glue it as well. The other reason why I don't want to glue the windows in is because the plastic dip that's sprayed on the window, if we put the window on with the silicone wet, and once we've bolted it all up and the silicone dries, over the period of time of 3, 6 months, a year or whatever, however long, probably overdue to temperature and time, that the window might want to change its shape a little bit, and it's going to try and pull and move around a little bit. And if the plastic tries to pull against the silicone, the only thing that the silicone's grabbed onto is the actual plastic dip itself, so the window's probably actually going to pull itself away from the plastic dip, and then you'll have the actual effect of looking like you've got a big air bubble, like in a bit of vinyl wrap that you see. So that's the reason why I don't want to apply the window while the silicone's still wet. So I'm just going to run a small bead. This is just going to help divert any water from getting into the car, and yeah, hopefully make a reasonable seal. If you get like a few high spots around the window edge, you can always just let the silicone dry, completely cure, and then just run around with the razor blade after that, so you just get the bead roughly all the same height. So hopefully when you bolt the window up, it'll be a pretty good seal.
Tell me that I need saving, finally awake and living. Yeah, yeah. The pressure inside was building. I felt under attack, and now my mind's attacked, and I've chosen my path. I've chosen my path. Oh, what's this? I finally read this helplessness. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it all around. And and dear God, save my soul, 'cause it is blood. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it all around.
Okay guys, so we've got the plastic dip all dry now. We've let the silicone dry overnight, so we're ready to pretty much test fit the windows and then just start trimming the silicone up so we get the desired height that we want the actual windows finishing off with against the car body. So they haven't turned out too bad. Like I say, when we flip them over, they actually give us the nice shine that we were looking for anyway, so that's why I wasn't too bothered with the matte black finish plastic dip, as you get a nice effect from the other side. So hopefully we get the height right with the silicone just by trimming it down just with a razor blade, and just test fitting it and see how the height is. If it needs a bit more trimming, trim it down a bit more until we're happy with the actual height and the finish look of the actual window. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay guys, so now we've got the window all bolted in. Everything's actually starting to look pretty good. All the gaps are not too bad around the edges. There's still a fair bit of wobble in it, but you know, for a bit of Lexan that's not heated up and bent into shape. It's not too bad because Lexan just doesn't like to bend. It really is trying to pull against those bolts fairly hard once you start tightening down a bit. But other than that, everything's looking pretty good at the moment, so we'll jump in the car and we'll start trimming out the plastic dip just with a razor blade going around the edge of the car frame, and hopefully we can pull it all off in one nice piece, and hopefully it all turns out nice and sweet. Okay guys, so we're inside and we're just going to go along and use a Stanley knife, and I'm just going to run around the edge of the windowsill, just slowly cutting away at the plastic dip. So I'm just going to cut all the way around first. Once I've run all the way around and I know I've done a clean cut all the way around the edge, then I'll pretty much just start pulling off the tape, and then I'll just try and pull off the plastic dip and just work my way to the edge. So fingers crossed it actually comes out alright.
You've gotta know that nothing lasts forever.
Okay guys, I thought I'd just show you a quick little look at what the plastic dip is like. Just showing you what it's like when I'm peeling off it. Very stretchy, very elasticy. Now it breaks. Spot there which I didn't cut right through. You sort of just got to, if you keep stretching it all the way it might break, so you just got to keep grabbing it at the bottom where it's peeling off. It's bizarre shit. It's really like just light rubber. It really is. I've never used this stuff before, and thought it'd come in handy in something like this, and it's definitely paid off. That's it. That's the whole window done inside. That's pretty cool. So here it is. Here's the window all done. The plastic dip's all stretched off, and it turned out a lot better than what I thought it was going to turn out like. Definitely surprised me, the plastic dip, that's for sure. Definitely I'd recommend using at least 5 coats, so do like one light coat and then do 4 coats, 4 real wet coats on top of that. If you're not real keen that you've got it on thick enough, just throw another coat over it. That's not going to be an issue at all. So that's definitely turned out pretty cool. The bolts have turned out alright. I've just used some 6mm X-head bolts, just some Allen key bolts, so I've sort of tried to give a bit of a sort of finishing look, I guess you could say. Yeah, other than that, that's turned out sweet. Much better than what it was before, so I'm happy with that. Okay guys, halfway through bolting up the back window now, and this is something I was worried about before, was the actual, what the gaps are going to be like after we got the silicone and the windows bolted on sort of permanently. The height's not too bad, it's just the actual gap opening that needs to be fixed up. The rest of the gap's pretty close, but it's not too bad. So what I'll just use is a bit of masking tape, just to show how much I want to need, or how much needs to be taken off the actual edge of the plastic, and I'll just grind the angle grinder back towards the plastic, so that's when I know that I've taken enough off, and it'll be the gap that I've made and that I'm looking for, that I want. Fortunately with the other side, that was definitely sort of turned out to be a pretty bad gap, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes, unfortunately. The actual quarter window itself has actually turned out better than the driver's side, which was quite neat, and yeah, pretty happy with it actually. It's actually turned out quite well, just for a bit of plastic and a bit of paper for a template and a bit of plastic dip. It's looking pretty cool. So I'll try and fix that gap up, and that'll just about be it.
Everything I don't know what to say now. I need to hold on to.
guys, so that pretty much wraps it up for this video. Unfortunately it's Friday today and the rest of the nutserts that I've ordered haven't rocked up, so there's not much else I can really do. I've still got about half the bolts to put into the actual back window, and then that'll be pretty much it, that'll be finished. So pretty much how you see it is how it's going to be done once it's fully bolted in, so there's nothing else that's going to change with it. The windows have come out a lot better than what I thought they were going to. Hopefully this video's given you an idea on what's involved, and hopefully you've learned some of the mistakes that I've made, and hopefully you can improve on that from what I've done. So if you like this video, give it a like. If you like what you see, subscribe, and big things to come hopefully soon. Okay, thank you.
Take much more now. I can't hold on to everything. I don't know what to say now.